Welcome back into the Sports Source. Folks, you see the phone number right there. That's how you can get in touch with one of East Tennessee's most proven realtors, Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. Phil has been helping people find the right home since 1980, and his team uses all the modern tools available, including this Sports Source showcase right there. Look at that beautiful home. You can call Phil and talk to him about that beautiful home right there. You can talk to him about other properties he has available, or you can talk to him about selling your own home. You will be glad that you did. That is Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. All right, want to welcome in a friend of the show, first time actually on the show, Jeff Jarnigan, longtime radio fixture in Tennessee, and of course the PA announcer for the men's basketball team. Mm-hmm. And you for years have done the orange and white game, last few years as well.
9 years.
9 years. Jeff, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Had you here because Bobby Denton, obviously legendary Knoxville radio personality, passed away with a battle with cancer this week. His achievements with WIVK, too numerous to mention, so we're going to focus on what he meant to Tennessee football fans, what his place is in UT football history, and we've got some stats here. I thought this was interesting. Voice of Neyland Stadium, 67 to 2013, I believe that's the correct dates. The Vols in that time at home were 234, 69, and 7. They had a 75% winning percentage. He went 4 full seasons, 21 games before the first loss in 1971. And the amazing stat there, of the 69 losses, 30 of them have come since 2000, which speaks to the recent form of the program. But Bobby Denton, from his football time in Tennessee to pay these prices and please pay no more, he is a staple of UT football for generations, which is a heck of a thing to say. Jeff, I wanted to start with you. You've been in the booth with Bobby because you've done the band at Neyland Stadium. I wanted to ask you, because we've talked about this the last week, some favorite stories of Bobby Denton.
The first one that springs to mind was a story when it was Peyton Manning's first start against Washington State. And they brought the roster in for them, and he's looking at it. I'm sitting next to it. We were literally sitting like this as I'm getting ready to do the Bandits pregame, and he's looking at it, and he's going down it, and it's all Hawaiian and Samoan and all these things. And I mean, and it's Walla Walla and Hula Walla and all that. And he's looking at this, and he looks over at me, he goes, Jarnigan, there ain't a Smith or Jones on their whole freaking team. And I looked at him, and I said, I'll bet there will be by the third quarter. He said, you're darn right there will be. And he said, which he wouldn't actually do. He would never do that, but it was funny.
Another one that you've told me about, I saw that it was mentioned, you mentioned it in the really good story you wrote about him, and that's the South Carolina game.
I was in the booth for that. It's 3rd and 20 some odd yards.
45.
Was it that far? That's even
really
worse than I thought.
It really was what he said.
That's even worse than I thought. Got to block that out. And he's sitting there and he says, it's 3rd and a river. And you hear coming down the hallway, and Bud Ford blasts the door open. He says, Bobby, you can't say that. Bobby whips around to him. He says, I reckon I just did. But Bobby was the ultimate pro. I have to tell you, he always showed up prepared. He was always spot on with his call. He had impeccable timing. And that's part of PA. Part of PA is being able to say something at the right time, because you are employed by the home team. I don't care what anybody says, you are. You have to show impartiality, yet inflection and things like that can make a big difference. And he was a master.
Many's the time the big tackle is made, and it was made by a host of volunteers, and that just ratcheted the crowd up a little bit more. Jimmy, of course, you've worked there at the station that ties back to Dick Broadcasting, Cumulus, where Bobby made his legacy. Your thoughts on Bobby Denton?
Well, he was a great person. I got to know him a lot more after I was hired at the radio station in 1998. We did a lot of things together, watched ball games together, talked a lot. I sought his advice about things I needed to do, and he was always really good. He was a very smart individual. He knew marketing, and he could help with that. He was great at human relations, and he was a great person as a sounding board to talk to about different things. And I tell you what, he had a quick wit about him too, and he would gig anybody. And there was nobody was a sacred cow. He'd go after John Majors or anybody else with some of his. And in fact, Majors, we were talking to him the other day, and he said, Bobby Denton was really clever. I'd never tell him that, but he was clever. But I really enjoyed his company, enjoyed being around him, played golf with him, and really got close to him. after I joined the radio station. Just a wonderful guy. One follow-up on the third in the river comment. Lou Holtz was asked after the game what he thought about the PA announcer saying that, and he said, "I thought it was longer than that."
That's pretty good. Mike, you wrote a piece, sort of an overall looking back at Bobby Denton. Spoke to a lot of people this week about him. His place, I mean, good luck. Where do you put him in the Hall of Honor there at Tennessee for what he contributed?
Well, aside from players and coaches, I think you've got John Ward, who's on one level, because you could listen to John Ward in
Anywhere.
Africa, anywhere around the state, anywhere. For Bobby, you had to be in Neyland Stadium. But for those 95, 100,000 people that were in Neyland Stadium for 40-something, nearly 50 years, Bobby Denton was, he was part of it, like running through the tee and all that. And when I talked to John Ward the other day, I said, I said, John, for all these many years, we had these two legends, Bobby, John Ward, sitting a few booths apart at the same time in all these games. I said, were you ever, aware of Bobby? And he said, no. He said, I'm concentrating, Bobby's concentrating, and they weren't. But those two guys, and they were very, very good friends. John was really emotional talking to me about Bobby Denton. So you got John outside the stadium, and for a lot of people, John inside the stadium on their radios. But still, in that stadium, Bobby Denton was part of what was happening.
You got one who will go down as the voice of the Vols and one who will go down as the voice of Neyland Stadium. There's a voice of Yankee Stadium, Bob Shepard, who did Yankee games forever. Derek Jeter, they had him record his announcement, his introduction for Derek Jeter. They still play that, even though Bob Shepard has passed at Yankee Stadium. When Derek Jeter comes out there, it's the voice of Bob Shepard. Thoughts on Tennessee? They have tapes of him saying, it's football time in Tennessee. Would that be appropriate to do that from this point out? I know no one here wants to force that on UT, but that seems like a good gesture. Thoughts on that?
I'm a traditionalist, and I think anytime you can capture history and be able to carry it forward, which as Butch Jones has done a wonderful job of, I think you should embrace that. And I personally, this is not anybody's opinion but mine purely, but I would absolutely do it. I wouldn't give it a second thought. I think that would be welcomed by the crowd. I think it would fire them up immensely. And quite frankly, after as many years as he did it, I think it would be incredibly fitting to have that continue in his honor.
Jeff Jarnigan, thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome.
But as we go to break here, I wanted to say my condolences to Charlotte, Bobby's sister, who I worked with here at Channel 6 many years ago. And this show has a little imprint of Bobby. When I was first planning it back in summer of 2003, Bobby was kind enough to take a phone call from me. He's down in Naples, Florida. We talked for 3 hours. I'm sure he went through one cigar in that. But we talked for 3 hours about what this kind of a show needed to be. So there's not much in East Tennessee Bobby Denton didn't touch, didn't have a hand in, and I'm glad he had a small hand in this show. So our condolences to the entire Denton family, to all of his close friends. Coming back, we'll talk. We'll take some questions from you in our Sunday Social next. Plenty more football to come on the Sports Source.